Okay, so Michel, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for being with us. We're fortunate to have Michel Vounatsos, the CEO of Biogen. So Michel, I'll jump right into the question because we don't have a lot of time here. I've got to start with the elephant in the room, so to speak, right? The famous Biogen meeting. So a few questions here. So Michel, what happened? How did you guys manage it? And maybe as importantly, how are you all guys doing today? Obviously, everybody very much hopes that everybody's fully recovered. But let's start on, how did it unfold?
Yeah, certainly. But allow me to start with the point that I will be making some forward-looking statements subject to risk and uncertainties. So I will refer you back to the SEC filing. I would like to begin by sincerely thanking the healthcare workers at Partners Healthcare, including the Mass General Hospital, Brigham and Women, but also the Department of Public Health in Massachusetts for taking care so nicely of all the Biogen's employees that were affected and their close ones that were affected by this pandemic. We were hit hard. This was real. This was emotional. This was personal. The good news is that the Biogen employees have recovered or are on the way to recover. Mm. It's incredible that how the world has changed since late February. At that time, there were a few cases outside of China, and the Biogen team did follow the national guidelines for traveling and for in-person meetings. And despite that, we saw many cases since early March. So, the meeting was scheduled late February. Will the meeting be scheduled a week later? Probably we will have canceled the meeting because the pandemic was going so fast. So we will never have knowingly exposed people to this risk if we would have known that there was a risk. This is not Biogen, this is not the company. We will never have taken these risks.
So, Michel, so first of all, I'm very happy. Everybody's very happy to hear everybody recovered. I know a few of your colleagues on the senior teams that I know got sick and fully recovered, so we're very excited about that. What are the main lessons learned, right? And not only for Biogen, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you guys at Biogen have started to plan, going forward, but also the thoughts and what you've learned in terms of potential implications for the industry, and maybe look at it in two parts, in the short term and how you look at the longer term.
So if I may get started with the short term, we are a neuroscience-focused company with adjacencies too, but we pull the sleeves like the rest of the industry and we fight COVID. So we have dedicated $10 million through the Biogen Foundation in order to support a non-profit organization with a focus on the underserved, the most vulnerable population. We've made more than 60 donations so far all around the world, including involving also hospitals with material and equipment. I would like to highlight two main initiatives that I'm very proud of. One, together with a Broad Institute at MIT and Harvard and Partners Healthcare, we did founded a COVID-19 biobank, whereby the Biogen employees and their close ones can go and donate their blood samples for research purposes, but also therapeutics. And I hear that many Biogen employees are going there in order to donate. So this was very important for the company once you're affected to rebound and eventually to be part of the solution. And another one that is important is a process development and manufacturing collaboration with Vir Technologies. They have potentially an antibody against COVID-19, and this is an important initiative that I count on. So this is for the short run. Now, for the longer run, returning and hopefully opening up the economy and the companies back again, I must admit that I am concerned and worried by the impact of this shock on the interpersonal relationship and the potential fear of the other one. and what does it mean in the context of a company or the society. I look with, and I'm amazed by the economic shock and the unemployment. I'm concerned about potentially the cascade effect on healthcare budgeting. I'm concerned also by the hundreds of millions of patients all around the world that did not consult during that time. And they're affected by diabetes, by cardiovascular disease, and this is going to come back at us down the road. I'm also concerned by the intersect potentially between the climate change and pandemics. And I want to hope that society will not wait to be hurt directly before we act. We need to be much more proactive. But I'm not an optimist. And we did consciously shut down the economy and all the companies in order to save lives. So hopefully moving forward, public health, resource allocation, people will be much more at the center in policy decision-making and resource allocation, much more than it was the case so far. I want to believe also that disparities in healthcare will be looked at and will be much more active. The resilience of the healthcare system also was very clear in our eyes, and hopefully we'll be investing so that we are more ready in case it happens. And last but not least, I am impressed by the way the industry came together. The industry with academia, with venture capital, and much more in order to be aligned and fight COVID. I want to see this interdependence. I want to see this alignment beyond COVID, because this is the strongest engine for innovation.
A quick question on a maybe purely operational aspect, but I think it, in my mind, it encapsulates some of the challenges that all the companies, large and small, have right now, which is the testing as part of the go back to work, and just thinking purely about the operational and obviously safety aspect, right? As you probably know, and I think you guys are part of it, there is an initiative among hundreds of biotech companies in Cambridge and beyond to basically start putting together a testing program. I should point out, without having any agenda, just observing the fact that unfortunately those purely community-based private initiative have been taken in the lack of federal leadership and action on the ground. And so those initiatives are taking off very rapidly. There are a number of sites that have been identified for people to be able to go to and get tested, get rapid result, and then a number of companies are putting in place standard operating practice to basically enable people to go back to work by sub-team and stacking the different schedule. Any thought purely operationally on how you guys handle it? Because you've got a large number of employees in Boston, and I can only imagine that it's an operational challenge.
So we are all working with the executive team and much more in collaboration with others and the Broad Institute at trying to find out what would be the best. But there is no blueprint, as you clearly mentioned. And you have to consider that a company like Biogen is a global company, and we don't have solely office-based people. So there is a level of complexity that is significant. You can anticipate that will be absolutely on the safe side of the equation, even if we have to test eventually every day the office-based employees, eventually with a test that is a bit more practical than what we have today, and also more reliable, like a saliva test, and where the employee will be tested every evening, and we have basically a diagnosis within a few hours, so that we can really very proactively detect or timely detect the people that are eventually infected or the new people that are, so that we can prevent a rebound of the problem that we did face. But we are working on that. I think that this pandemic is absolutely a trigger for an accelerated change in the industry, Jeff. I believe that this disruption is generating a progress that we were dreaming of having, in 10 years from now. in every single part of the organization. Let's think at the way we conduct clinical trials nowadays and the patient visits. Think about the people management aspect and eventually the stress level that working from home generates in terms of work-life balance. So what is, life, what is work, everything is put together, when people work remotely, and this is creating eventually some problems. Biomanufacturing, supply chain, but customer engagement and digitalization, what a fantastic opportunity. So I cannot wait to see, and we got started actually, because we were always pretty progressist on alternative channels and embracing new models of operation. I cannot wait to see Biogen really take the lead with a few others on this new pharma model that was slow to come historically for reasons that we all know. But I think that Biogen has the people and the capability in terms of talent. We have also the specialization into one vein that can be pretty useful, and we have the financial means. So I'm looking forward actually to shaping this new model. One cannot sit and wait to resume on a model of the past. That will never come back on the same way.
So Michel, that's a great segue into Biogen and what's the future will bring, the strategy, some updates on the company. But going back to your point about how the overall industry needs to change, maybe a couple of examples of what you just mentioned. What are the things that are on your mind in terms of what might have to change, either operationally or from a strategic standpoint, and from the way the industry at large is structured going forward?
So there are things that are changing and will change. The writing is on the wall. If I can, take the way we conduct the clinical trials nowadays, or the customer engagement, where we see a dramatic shift from face to face, from the medical affairs team and the commercial teams to much more digital. And there was a medical affairs event last week at Biogen with close to 2,000 people that were engaged, and then you can build connectivity on a new channel that can be very effective and efficient. These are some examples, but I believe that not everything will change also, because the epidemiology is there, and we need to go back to what we are the best at. And concerning Biogen, the focus on neuroscience and neurological diseases based on the mounting epidemiology is our strategy and remains our strategy for the time being. More than 50 million people around the world living demented, more than 10 million Parkinson patients, ALS without treatment. We need to take care of those patients. We need to take care of this epidemiology. So we need companies to be fully focused and dedicated to that space. That is increasing because of aging, because of environment, or because of genetic factors. If I can quote two rapidly, the first one is our BIP67 compound, tofersen, in ALS for a rare genetic population, the superoxide dismutase 1, SOD1. We had very good phase 1-2. And this is also a bit decreasing the risk when you take genetically validated targets. And so those people absolutely no hope. And we are very encouraged by those results and looking forward to the next stage of the clinical development and bringing the product to market. Another one, our in-house BDCA2 in lupus. The data that we communicated in Q4, very positive for this chronic disease for which there is high level of mortality and not many treatment. So we're looking forward now to move to phase 3. This organization has its foundation neuroimmunology in MS since more than close to 25 years. Just imagine the learning on the neuron and the axonal health, and eventually the correlation between that and what it means for Alzheimer's, Parkinson, ALS, or eventually stroke. So the interconnectivity in that space is a synergy, is a big plus for those that are fully dedicated to neuroscience. And this is the mission of the organization. So
one more related question about that, Michel, on the strategy and the the impact of and the lesson learned from COVID. Obviously, everybody knows that a lot of companies have had delays in clinical trials. But more importantly, you've seen some rare disease companies where 100% of their patient population, their addressable market as of today, based on their pipeline, is in hospital, high morbidity, complicated procedure, and the deployment of those medicines has essentially been stopped by COVID. I would imagine going forward that the industry and governments would think about investment in public health and infrastructure so that if we were to be affected again by something like that, the healthcare system could continue to function in a more normal way than it has. Is there some implication on the company side, right?
Yeah.
And obviously not all of your business in your particular case is affected by that, but your long-range planning has to be taking that into account.
Yeah, and it's difficult to set assumption based on this risk. But what you outline is absolutely correct, even for life-saving therapies, or in the case of our treatment for spinal muscular atrophy, more for the adult form and the teenager. This is supposed to be a non-elective treatment. I mean, if there is a continuous regain on functionality. And despite that, the fear of the patients and the family to go to hospitals. So we saw some disruption, and also in terms of clinical trial settings, for example, for stroke, we see a delay in one of our trials where there is a delay of a few months. So this is absolutely serious. This was unanticipated because we thought that at least for SMA the people will go, but there is absolutely this fear. For stroke, for example, I think it was communicated that we saw during that period 40% less admission to hospitals for stroke. So we know that the epidemiology didn't change. We know that the incidence remained the same. But the people eventually stayed at home. And as I said earlier, for all the management of chronic diseases or acute diseases, the people were fearing to go to see their, in private practices the same. They saw 40 to 50% decrease of inpatient visits. This has consequences. This is a hidden part of the iceberg that will come back and bite at us if we're not careful in the future.
So, Michel, maybe one last question on the pipeline, the portfolio. As you can imagine, I cannot not ask you about aducanumab, and so I'll just leave it at that. So, tell me, what did lots of controversy recently, and everybody has been speculating. They have their own story in their mind, but maybe you can give us in a brief minute, where you are here.
I was expecting this question.
I know you were.
So listen, it's pretty simple. We remain optimistic about the prospect of bringing aducanumab to the market, to the patients in need, together with our collaboration partner, SI. We are making tremendous progress in terms of pre-launch activities, with a focus on the US first, but also in major European markets and in Japan, focusing first for those on medical affairs, market access, and patient society. The filing has de facto started since we have an open BLA and since we have submitted modules for registration. And we do anticipate basically the filing to be completed in Q3. So we remain optimistic about this opportunity.
Okay, great. Well, Michel, I'm going to ask you for your closing remark here. We're about to run out of time. And obviously, extraordinary times. You guys have been through a lot at Biogen. I'm sure you've learned more than many, given the unfortunate circumstances. So tell us your closing remarks.
So maybe three rapidly. The first one is that COVID-19 was real for the company I'm leading. We've been hurt and we come back strong and we want to join the fight. And we want to use this as an opportunity also to learn and to make every single part of the company benefit from this learning and evolve towards somehow a new model. So this is the first one. The second one is that one should not forget that the epidemiology remains the same or even increasing for neurological diseases. This is our specialization. This is our core. This is our vein. This is where we believe we have an inequity in terms of capability, talents, and programs. So value creation opportunity for the patients first is tremendous. So we will remain focused on this strategy for the time being. And last but not least, the prospect for aducanumab remain positive, and we are encouraged by our position so far.
Well, Michel, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon, and it was great to spend a few minutes with you. And we wish Biogen teams the best going forward. You guys have been through a lot.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you.